Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see so many people have joined us today for our Lunch and Lead session called Food for Thought. So we called it Food for Thought because obviously some of you might be munching as we chat today using your lunch hour. We're really glad that you were able to join us virtually for this really interesting session. So we have on with us today, we have Purdue Northwest staff, we have some of our faculty, we have community members and community leaders from across Northwest Indiana. I see some of you. Our program participants, some are former Leadership Northwest Indiana graduates and Explorer graduates. So welcome everyone. We're so glad to see you, whether you are a student, a staff member, a community member. We're really glad you're here to talk to us about leadership today. So the Leadership Institute, as most of you know, is the hub of leadership development in Northwest Indiana. We are proudly associated with Purdue Northwest, which gives us a lot of depth because we have access to fabulous leadership experts, researchers, and academics who can fill out our plate. As most of you are practitioners of leadership, we practice leadership in all of areas of our lives. We are balanced by people who know the theory behind leadership. And so those of you that hear me often will know that I often say we have Dr. Rachel Clapp-Smith, who is really, and Dr. Jane, who are really great experts at the theory and the research behind leadership. And it's so fascinating for those of us who are practitioners to know that there's all this actual theory that puts form and shape to the world of leadership. So today we are really, really lucky to have a wonderful guest. Marianne Ahern is a Michigan City native. Most of you know that Michigan City is my home. And so Marianne and I have a long and colorful history. I met Marianne when I was 18 years old. We both went to John Carroll University, and that's where I met her. She was in Murphy Hall with me, the girls' dorm. Back in the day, they had girls and boys living separately. We won't tell our age, but you can probably figure it out. So Marianne and I have our friends and actual family members for about 40 years. And she has been such a marvelous friend and a colleague, but also a political advisor to me. She has a lot of really interesting experiences. So I'll just chat with you briefly about it. She graduated with her bachelor's from John Carroll University. She went to work in high schools in Chicago as an English teacher. And so she did that for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden she said, hey, I think I want to try something different. I'm going to go to Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern. And I think I might try broadcasting. And we were like, okay. And all of the doubting Thomases in the family, Marianne was, the baby of the family. We then were proven wrong. She then went to Peoria and talked about Caterpillar tractors and things like that for her first stint. Then we were so excited that she was assigned in her next job to Atlanta, which was a much bigger market. And then she was there just a few short years and she landed a plum job at NBC in Chicago. We were, as a family, so proud. And then we began to be able to watch Marianne's career develop as a political reporter and a religious reporter. And she has had a really fascinating journalistic career. She has covered elections from local aldermanic elections in Chicago to the very biggest presidential elections over the last couple decades. She's often seen at the White House. She's at the State House in Springfield. And she's followed by people all over the country, not only her, former colleagues in college and in grad school, but many people who are in Chicago then leave, still follow Marianne's stories because she has a really, and you'll hear from her shortly, she has a really very personal, conversational style that makes people really feel that she's just like us, which is true. She is just like us. She's gained quite a bit of recognition around religion. She as a Catholic, was assigned to follow the Pope and has followed each Pope over the last couple of decades. She also did a remarkable job breaking the news about sexual scandals in the Chicago Catholic Diocese. And while she probably made some people feel really uncomfortable, she did a wonderful job helping open that story, crack it open, and create the avenue for a lay review board and some other improvements in the way the Catholic Church handles those types of crimes and scandals. So Marianne has been, she covers stories about parenting. She's a parent of 3, a grandmother of 1, and another on the way. So she's got that family angle that people really, really appreciate. And she's covered really fun things like when Princess Di came to Chicago, she followed that. She interviewed Christopher Reeve as he was, on his journey toward the end of his life. She's done really wonderful stories about veterans, and her story about the veteran whose Purple Heart was revoked. I remember that was a tear-jerking story. She's covered snowstorms and all the regular things that reporters cover. But what she really brings to her leadership is that spirit of heart, and that the values that she holds dear, you really see them reflected in her work. So I'm going to pass to Dr. Rachel, who will kind of frame Marianne's leadership talk today, and then we will let Marianne take it away. The format today will be Rachel introducing some leadership theories, and as you know, she's the academic in our group, so she will kind of help us formulate that framework. And then Marianne will talk maybe for 20, 25 minutes. And in the chat, if you have questions for Marianne, you can just type them in, and then we will start pulling questions from the chat after that. So that's kind of our format today. Does that sound good? Okay, thumbs up. All right, Rachel, I'm going to pass to you to frame Marianne's conversation with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And thank you, Marianne, for being with us today. I'm so excited to listen to Sheila just gave such an amazing introduction. I think that just speaks to what a great person you are to spend with us today, based on some of the things that we've been talking about in our programs. So for those of you who are in our programs, I'm going to just comment on a couple things that we talked about the last time we were together. And for those of you who are not in our programs, this might be helpful just to frame where we are and some of the things that we've been talking about. So much of what we think about with leadership is taking a whole person approach to leadership, right? We don't walk into our work domain and suddenly we're just a completely different person. We come in with our whole body and our whole minds. As a result, we don't leave limbs at home when we're leading at work. So this whole person approach really is predicated on the idea that we operate in multiple domains in our lives. And what's beautiful about that is that those domains can spill over and cross over in a lot of different ways. So recently with our groups, we've talked about our leader identities. How do we see ourselves as leaders? And some of the sub-identities that we hold that make up who we are as individuals. What's glorious about a leader identity is it can transcend any of our sub-identities that we choose it to. So just to give an example of what I mean, I'm a parent, I'm a professor, I might be a little league coach. I can be a leader in each of those sub-identities, and those all operate in different domains of my life, and yet my leader identity comes with me everywhere I go. So we're really trying to understand how our different identities intersect and overlap with our leader identity. So one of the things we asked our groups to do in our last time that we met, and that they've probably been reflecting on since then, is to put a timeline together over what we call the past timeline. What are the moments that have mattered in their development as a leader? And what's been really interesting about thinking about this or reflecting on the key moments in your past is that sometimes they prompt us to really build a narrative around who we are as leaders and to understand those moments. So Sheila just shared with us some wonderful moments, and I think Marianne, you probably will expand on these a little bit, but how have they helped you develop and kind of emerge your leader narrative or your identity and how you see yourself? So I guess for the participants in the group, I would suggest, as we hear these fantastic stories, they might prompt us to start thinking about our own stories that have mattered in our own development. So with that, I am so excited to hear about your multiple domains, your various sub-identities, and some of the moments that have mattered, and us understanding what you bring as a leader to our our society and our communities.
Well, thank you, Rachel and Sheila. Thanks so much, guys. Welcome to my daughter's bedroom in Chicago. Yippee. This crazy pandemic has forced us all to kind of recalibrate how we work, what we do. And so, yes, this for the next 2 weeks, we've had some folks in our newsroom, and I really work out of a isolated office, but they've sent me home for 2 weeks because they want everybody super careful as this spike in cases has come up. So I've transformed just in the last 2 days. I've had to quickly, and that's part of, all of this change is, when they first said you're going to have to work from home, I said, I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's kind of the story of my life. I might not have done it yet, but I will try. I like to say, if you're not on the bus, then get off. You got to learn how to figure it out. And that's what I have done many different times. I loved teaching. As Sheila mentioned, I was a high school English teacher. I absolutely loved it. But at the same time, I said to myself, you know what? I really always wanted to be a reporter. I was the editor of my high school paper. I wrote a little bit for the paper in college. I used to even have the News Dispatch delivered in college, believe it or not. So I really liked the newspaper and reading and being on top of what was going on. So I thought, you know what? If I don't try this, if I don't want to have regrets, I better go for it. So I did go back to school, and that is how this whole crazy new career started, from Peoria to Atlanta, now to Chicago. And it seems like, I've sort of had a couple of different lifetimes, and during those couple different lifetimes, there are challenges for sure. I don't think that everything has been a bed of roses, or that I walked in and they said, oh, sure, we'd love to hire you. It doesn't happen that way. I really am an example of someone who has clawed and clawed and clawed and been relentless for something that I wanted. When you decide to change your career at 27 years old, 28 years old, and you have to spend 2.5 lonely years in Peoria. And no offense to Peoria, but I didn't know anyone there, and it was tough and lonely. And yet now looking back, those experiences of what you gather there led me to the next spot. And I always was focused on coming back to Chicago. I really knew that I really wouldn't have made it, wouldn't have felt like I had gone after the dream job that I wanted if I didn't get to come back and report from Chicago. So while Atlanta was interesting, and I had an older sister and her kids and family there at the time, which made it much more palatable when you're working a lot to have somewhere to go on Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of that, because Peoria was pretty lonely. But always in the back of my mind wanting to come back to Chicago. So, and when I arrived back in Chicago now, gosh, it seems it did go in a blink of an eye. I mean, it's gone so fast. I can't even believe that I have been here more than 30 years. It's crazy. But my role first was general assignment reporter, which means, as Sheila mentioned, snowstorms, whatever is happening. And had some fun stuff along the way. The White Sox win the World Series, the Cubs win the World. That kind of stuff is fun as well. But then there's also the tough part of crime. And Chicago, unfortunately, has a lot of it. And so always wanting to focus more on an issue rather than the crime stories. I was trying to make my way to be the political reporter. Took a little sidetrack by covering religion. And that is such an interesting route because there are some similarities, as much as folks want to say there aren't. There really are. The hierarchy, the way that it's established of, you're not necessarily allowed in to ask the questions. I went through all of that. And it was by chance that I happened to cover the pre-sex abuse crisis. I had met with some priests that I knew who had left the priesthood to get married. And I said to them, you're a story. I really want to do a story about you. And they said, we're not the story. The story is they're moving priests around to various parishes who have abused children. And honestly, I couldn't even comprehend that idea. I can still see myself sitting at lunch with them and my heart sinking. I'm Catholic. I've gone to Catholic schools. I didn't take to be Catholic to be upset, but you're sort of part of this. And how do you now report on this? It was tough. It was, at the same time, I felt a little bit like I sort of knew the rules. I knew the hierarchy rules, and I knew that they weren't going to be very pleasant or easy to talk to, but I couldn't put my head in the sand and say, this is not happening. And this is back in 1991. This is before Boston. And if you've never seen the movie Spotlight, it was a terrific movie. At the end of that movie, I literally stood up at the movie theater and said, yes, on a much smaller scale. I didn't have all the resources of the Boston Globe, but that was my life of talking to people who had been abused and talking to the archdiocese and finding sources who would give me insight. And yet, even though that was a very hard, difficult story to do, I do not walk away from it. I don't hide from it. I'm not like wearing it as a badge of honor, but I'm glad we did it. It also thankfully led to me doing some positive stories that I had to go to my boss and say, you cannot send me to every church in town and be the person who is constantly bashing the church. And the Catholic Church in Chicago is a big deal. They run schools, they run hospitals, Catholic charities. It's a very part of the social fabric here. And I said, I have to do more positive story. I can't do a one story only. And that led me to cover Pope John Paul II on several of his World Youth Days, from Montreal to, Toronto to Denver to New York to Cuba. That was amazing. Cuba was amazing. 1995, no internet in Cuba. We get there. And all the networks, the big networks arrive, the big anchormen arrive at the time. It's Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, Peter Jennings. They're all there. They're not there one night. Now, my assignment at that time, I not only reported for Chicago, but I was the reporter that did it for all the little NBC stations who didn't send anyone, which would be about 80. And I would do 80 live shots. Just keep repeating every day. Mary and Bob, here's the latest. Joe and Cindy, did you hear this? Just keep doing them all morning long for like 4 or 5 hours. The very first night, we get to, the Pope arrives in Cuba and the network anchors are there and the place is buzzing, and I'm doing the overnight. I have to get up at midnight to do the early morning shift. And this is when there are still wire machines that go bing, 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 when there's a big story. We were sitting in a workspace, we hear bing, 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 and we go over to it and read, the Washington Post will report President Clinton had an affair with an intern. Well, everyone left but me. Brokaw left, Jennings left, they all left. Dan Rather left. They all headed back. I stayed because I was there for all these small states, and I was there for 10 days. It was pretty interesting, but it was also depressing, I have to say. Now, I'm sure Cuba's changed a lot since then, but I felt like we were eating their last chicken. Honest to God, it was just, it was so poor, and it was just sad. And it was, it is one of the trips that has just profoundly affected me, of how the cutoff, the no access to what was going on in the rest of the world, kept these folks from knowing what else? I mean, I hope now, I know it's much better now, but it was really, really wild. Well, so covering the church led me then, when there was an opening as the political reporter in 2006, our longtime political reporter retired. I should also mention, if you think this is crazy, of course, I have 3 children. During this time for 10 years, I did work 3 days a week. And that was quite a feat. No one in TV works 3 days a week. Everybody's working, and I'm doing that more now, a million days a week. We're all, you can't seem to put it down. But that window when my kids were young was just so important and so much joy. And I didn't want to miss all that. And so I had not so much to convince my boss, it was my union that was nervous about it and didn't want me. They were afraid they would make us all part-timers. That was the response I got. And I literally had to take the union steward. It was my, who was the, the movie, the famous movie, or the gal that, the union leader, I can't think of, see my mind, I'm too old. Anyway, it was my moment that I pulled the union steward aside and I said, listen, you work for me. I don't work for you. You're my union steward. Here's how it's going to go. My boss said I can work 3 days a week and you're blocking it. And he literally, his response to me was, oh, I know how you feel. I've had, he was an older guy at the time. He goes, I have kids too. And all I could think to myself was, you're never home. That's not going to be me. That's not going to be me. I said, well, listen, here, we got to work this out. After that conversation, next day, I started working 3 days a week. So for 10 years, and that's really what has kept me sane. Hopefully my family will say I was there for them. You're never perfect. Mom gets blamed for everything. But so during that time, covering the church, 3 days a week was a little tough. When there was a really big story, I would come in at times, never in the summer because I wanted to be at the beach in Michigan City. But, I worked it out. You figure it out, and you don't try to be an obstructionist, but you also try to work it out with everybody. So when they would call me, I probably did 5 or 6 extra days a year because there was a big story going on, and I would come in. Anyway, political reporter opening comes. This is my, this is like my lotto. I have won the lotto that I get to cover politics in Chicago. I mean, we were raised around the kitchen table, arguing, Supreme Court nominee, Vietnam War, where are we headed next? I mean, this was part of our fabric of our conversation. And it wasn't just one point of view, it was many points of view. I love politics. I love all of it. There are days that are better than others. I'm not going to say that. That's not true. But to get to cover it on a daily basis, this is my job. I go and now I'm home right now, but I make a little movie every day of what's going on, of what we see as the big story of the day. I mean, what could be better than that? I just, and even on the days that people aren't so good to me or don't want to talk to me, or we make it work. We make it work. So I think that covering the church and the backpedaling that happened there and the difficulty they had in sort of telling the truth at the beginning and then finally opening up their records gave me sort of a good background on how to cover some of these politicians, from Mayor Daley to Rahm Emanuel to now Mayor Lightfoot. Covering those campaigns were crazy interesting. During the Mayor Emanuel's administration, he and I did not hit it off. I think that he sort of liked having someone to kind of up against, that wasn't afraid of him, that he liked that back and forth. Now, believe it or not, he's my new BFF. Ram texts me all the time. It is the craziest thing ever because he didn't like me so much when I covered him for 8 years. But I get a text from him at least once a week about what might be going on in the world today. Of course, he's not so happy about how the leadership is going on here in Chicago. So he's got a lot of, questions about that. And, but it's wild how that happens. So as a reporter, being fair is never easy. We're people, what are we going to say? Yes, we have bias. Who's going to lie about that? We try our very best not to. These days, it's even harder with claims of fake news and there's some basis to that. There is fake news, but not all of it is fake news. And it's unfortunate that you can't seem to watch, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, everybody's got a bent going, they're all leaning one way or the other. And some days you just want to know, please tell me what's going on without your insight, your inferences. And here we are, just election day, days away. We all just, in my newsroom, our conference calls that we have a couple times a day, just got the big reminder. Watch your social media feed. Don't be so quick to like or post or whatever, unless you've thoroughly read the article. Be careful about what's going on. People see us and think, oh, then you're endorsing that person or you're endorsing that idea. Social media has been such a huge change in my business. No longer do I just report on the 5 or the 6 o'clock news. I am a Twitter fanatic. I am constant all day long, just sending stuff out, wanting to be first, where I have to literally take a breath and say to myself, slow down. It's not always right to be, it's not always best to be first. It's best to be right. And those are in our race to wanting to break the big story. Sometimes we get caught up in that. And here, all these years later, I still love that chase. I still love that competition. We talked a little bit, about how I got here, that obviously I'm driven and competitive. I give that up. All right. But I would also tell you, believe it or not, it might not sound like it today, I can be shy. I am reluctant to go to the party alone. I don't like to call and get my hair appointment. There's those kinds of things that I'm like, oh, could somebody do that for me? I'm not always on stage. I'm not, honestly. And, but at the same time, if I had been afraid to leave teaching, and if I had said, I taught at New Trier, one of the most fabulous high schools there is. It was great. But if I had not gone back to get my master's in journalism, broadcast journalism, if I hadn't taken that risk, obviously, all of this would not have happened. Do I still have self-doubt? You better believe it. Of course I do. And I think part of my profession is having some doubt. And I think that is okay. As a reporter, you're constantly learning. You're thrown into new situations that you might not know anything about. You might think, oh, I've done that story before. I've done that. But really, if I get to that stage where I feel like I've done it all, then that's when I need to walk away, because I really do not feel that way. I've had a lot of challenges, of course, as a woman covering politics, can be kind of daunting to be I'll give you one example. Mayor Daley would take what we call Q&A, the questions and answers after a news conference. There would be a news conference, let's say about a ribbon cutting or a new summer school program where I might have run into Sheila at. There might have been, Who knows? There's an event that the mayor wants to announce. As reporters, we go looking for questions. We have questions about something else, whatever the controversy of the day might be. So the day I'm at a news conference with Mayor Daley, and there had been a police officer who, because Lakeshore Drive was not plowed, his car rammed into a light pole and he died. This is several years ago. And I was sent to ask him about that. So, and it's not just Mayor Daley. There's probably 20, 30 people standing along with him for their ribbon cutting. And of course, they want you to ask all about the ribbon cutting and what's the latest. And we really, I hate to be so rude, but we don't care. We really want to know about the police officer who died on Lakeshore Drive because the street wasn't plowed. So, I wait my turn. He does his, and I raise my hand and ask my question, Mayor, what happened? Lakeshore Drive, unfortunately, this police officer. This is Mayor Daley. What do you know? You don't even live in the city. Don't you live in Evanston? Why do you care? I literally have to say, Mr. Mayor, that's not the question. The question is about Lakeshore Drive. He just left. He just walked away. His press secretary comes up to me afterwards. They had given him prepared remarks. They knew the question was going to come up. And she literally hands me the prepared remarks and she says, here you go. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. So, you know what? It takes, now we're in the middle of this pandemic. It is scary. They are taking big precautions for us. We are socially distanced. You're doing interviews. We're doing them outside. And it's going to be tough this winter. It's going to probably be a lot of Zoom calls. We are not going into people's homes. When I go to the mayor or I go to the governor's office for briefings, they take our temperatures before we go in. They have us distant from each other. We work with one photographer so that should either of us get sick, we're not infecting the entire group. And I have not been in the newsroom at my desk since March 17th. That was the last day, the day of the Illinois primary. I have been working for a while up on an isolated office, but now for 2 weeks I'm working from home. I hope I get to go back to that isolated office because it's kind of nice to have somewhere to go. I don't know if they're going to let me back though, because they're very, very nervous about it all. But anyway, I think I've given you sort of, I want to leave time for questions. It's kind of all over the place, but that's my life. I got to roll with the punches. That's what I do every single day. I have a phone, an iPad, a desktop. They're all kind of, calling me at different times, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it. Please send me your questions.
So Marianne, we have some questions in the chat box. I don't know if you can, if you can scroll through them, or if you would like me to. One of them I think that's really interesting is how much time do you devote to researching a story, and how do you make sure your information is accurate? So as a leader, you're sifting things through by your instincts and by your training, but also how do you know how to make that balance? There's a lot of questions on here about truth in media, and the kind of the impact of social media and money, and that race to break the first story, and whether it's accurate or not sometimes is immaterial. So the first question about how do you balance researching and how much time do you devote, and how do you know when you hit the truth or hit the jackpot?
All right. So time is our biggest enemy, obviously. We're on a tight deadline every day. I have a 9 a.m. conference call every day where we talk about what the story assignments are. And from there, I'm off and running. So usually by 9:30, I know what my plan is for the day. Today, for instance, I am doing a profile of the two candidates running for Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Fox, Patrick O'Brien. And believe it or not, they haven't there's a lot of ads on right now, but I really haven't ever spoken to Patrick O'Brien till about an hour ago. So quickly, I had to get various articles, read quickly, and find out, not only what are his issues, but what might be sort of a controversy, what might be something that others would say they want to know more about. So would it be nice to have spent an evening or several hours? Yes, but that I would be lying if I told you I got to do that every single time. Every story is sort of different. I've often been during this pandemic, I've been at the briefings that the governor has every day. Now, some of those, and people have complained a little bit, they almost seem a little bit like a campaign commercial at times, So, for instance, one sec. He's facing a lot of backlash about closing the restaurants and the indoor dining. And is that the right way to go? And so my job might be just to get out that information of what the governor has decided to do. And now tonight, for instance, our investigative reporter, Phil Rogers, is doing a piece on, they've gone through the data. Where are the outbreaks of this pandemic? Are they really the restaurants? Is that, high on the list? Or is it workplace? Is it schools? Is it grocery stores? And so why are restaurants being, having to shut down? So my job often is sort of the nuts and bolts fast, turn it around, get it on the air. And somebody else might have more of the in-depth. Carol Marine and I, unfortunately, she's retiring and I'm going to miss her so much. We've been a tag team. I've been the political reporter. She's been the political editor, which means she does more of the analysis. I do more of the everyday. Leading up to the election, we've decided to do profiles of just kind of everyday people. We did a veteran. We did a activist, 2 suburban moms. This next week, we're doing a first responder. Those have been fun for me because they've been a little more than just the minute 20 quick story. We've sat down and talked to them. We've asked them what issues mean a lot to them. And my photographer editor is just amazing. So he's put together nice pieces. We've called them Voices for 2020. That's been sort of a special, more profile kind of piece. So,
Marianne, can I ask you a little bit about leadership? When you talk about Carol Marine, I've enjoyed watching your relationship grow from the years you were a cub reporter, and she was sort of someone that you wanted to emulate. We all call you Thelma and Louise in the family because it's kind of, you guys have a kind of a nice shtick between you. You can see that you are friends and good colleagues. So you're considered in the Chicago community as a female leader. Whether you want to wear that mantle or not, it is on you. And, wherever you go and wherever you are, people see you as a leader. So talk to us a little bit about your role as a leader in your career, but also for those young people who are coming up behind you. I know that your world as a woman in broadcast journalism is really, really competitive. And you and I have had that conversation about, all these young pups coming up behind you and, really wanting to boot you out and take your spot. And you talk about how gritty it has been to, claw your way to the top and then stay there. And I know that's, you and I have had those offline conversations. So talk to us a little bit about the role that you have assumed as a leader and then a leader in your career and kind of, some of your little tidbits of wisdom, perhaps.
Well, Carol Marine is by far the gold standard. I can't put enough adjectives before Carol Marine because she's not only been extremely generous with contacts and advice and just, I talk to her every single day. Maybe not every weekend, but she cares about you, but she doesn't just do that for me. She does that. She has been such an example of how to also reach out to other younger reporters in our newsroom. that it isn't been, hey, tough luck, I got mine, go get yours. Not at all. Carol is the first to say, hey, I liked your story, but I wonder if you might have thought about this. She would never get in your face, but if you asked her for advice, oh my gosh, she's got plenty of it. Kind, thoughtful. I mean, she's been such an example of how do you pay it forward. I have a young reporter at the Sun-Times who she just started in the political beat. She was doing general assignment. And Carol said, do you mind having lunch with? I was like, oh my God, do I mind having lunch with her? Of course not. But that's the kind of thing that Carol helps organize and say, she's just a little nervous. She just got this beat. Give her some advice, some tips of what you need to do, who you call, who you listen to, who you say, okay, no problem, that kind of thing. So yes, and if we think that we're the only one with the answers, that's not being a leader. No. Being a leader is being collaborative. Being a leader is making sure that, when we have a new reporter start, I send an email and say, here's my cell phone. Here's how you reach me. Call me anytime. You're new in town. I have an unbelievable phone contact list. You're going to be stuck on Saturday mornings trying to find somebody to talk to you. Please don't be afraid to reach out to me. I will help you find us. If I can help you find them, I will do it for you. I mean, that's the kinds of things in my world, I hope, that I help bring others along. Because no, if you think that you're the only one with the answers, no way. And in my world, it is so collaborative. I say it's kind of like dominoes lining up. We're putting on a newscast every night. And if one of those dominoes is out of sync, guess what? The whole thing falls apart. It's the director, the writer, the photog, the person on the assignment desk. And if we, I think my mom actually taught me this, Sheila, as a young teacher, she said to me, you be nice to everybody. You be nice to the guy who cleans your office, the school janitor, the secretary. We don't ever think that you're better or anything than anybody, because guess what? They're the people that help you every day, that help you get your story now as a reporter, that help me get my story on the air. So I think that's the part. Sometimes we think that being a leader means you're the only one making the decisions. And I don't think that that's true at all.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat about fake news, and that's kind of a buzzword these days. So there's a couple questions about what's your best advice for teaching young people how to find reliable and accurate sources in the day of social media and fake news, and then another one about how do you feel reporting has changed and evolved in this era of fake news. And here's another one. Do people question credibility now more than they used to because fake news is a hot topic, or is it only during election years when people pay attention? So could you talk to us a little bit about that whole fake news? Is it a syndrome? Is it telling about our culture? Is it a response from social media? Which, you talk about Twitter, all of us are familiar with the fact that it used to be you'd watch the news at 5 o'clock and then maybe at 10 or 11. And that would be your news for the day. Now it's 24/7. You can, and somebody's creating that news. So, and somebody's checking it or not checking it. So talk to us a little bit about that change and how does the word fake news really resonate in your collegial group?
In the old day, it was when you would call someone for a story who didn't want to talk to you, they would say, oh, slow news day. And now it's, oh, fake news. I'm so sorry. I think I'm talking too much.
Yes, fake news has definitely got it's kind of a buzzword, and so I think it's important to know: is it just a cultural buzzword now, or is there?
It is. It is a cultural buzzword. I hope it goes away. I do think it's valid, though. I'm not going to say that there's no fake news. There is obviously fake news. So here's what you need to do. You need to have reputable sources in your daily news feed, and that might include Fox News. It might include MSNBC. It might include the Washington Post. It might include the National Journal. Let's take a look at all. It's a big tent. It's a big tent. And if all your reading and listening and watching is one side, whether it be all liberal or all conservative, you're not getting the full view. So yes, there is some fake news out there, but let's make sure that you're getting your sources from reputable journalism.
Thanks, Marianne.
You gotta get water. I'm so sorry. I'm just talking.
That's okay.
I hear you.
Okay, so Emily Hickson asked a really good question. Given that many people look to you as a leader to help us analyze and guide us through these turbulent times, you know, you're the media and you're helping kind of feed us information. How are you preparing for election night and the role that you'll be playing in helping the public navigate through the uncertainties that are likely post-election? Because, you know, we are all pretty sure that on election night, a lot of races will not be nailed down shut. I know here in LaPorte County, I get the daily turnout numbers of who's early voting and how many absentee ballots have been returned, and we've never seen anything like it. I'm comparing it to past presidentials over the last 20 years, and we have never seen early voting and the number of mail-in ballots arriving daily. People, you know, in the hundreds and thousands showing up to vote early, which is unheard of in our county. And I'm seeing, when I look at national numbers, I'm seeing, you know, that I heard Arizona had 1 million new registered voters for this presidential election. So, you know, how are you preparing for election night? Give us the inside track so when we watch you, we'll know. We want to know the scoops, and then you know, helping the public navigate through the uncertainties of election. How, you know, what do you think your role as the political reporter for your station, but also your leadership role in the Chicagoland community?
Well, it is going to be so much different this year. I've never spent an election night in 35 years as a reporter in my daughter's bedroom reporting the news. So that's going to be a lot different. I have been at an election campaign. I've been, you know, whether it was 4 years ago, I was at Hillary. I was in New York. You know, before that, I was at Obama's at his headquarters. And then I've done, whether it's been an alderman or a mayor. I mean, it's so much fun. Always way better to be at the winner. Let me say that at the top. They're a lot nicer to you. And sometimes there's even, you know, free snacks. So we love that. But this is going to be a lot different to have to do it from here. What I will get though, and now that I've been around doing this for a while, I know some good sources who get the exit polls in the afternoon. There's exit polls that come out around 2:00 in the afternoon. And that will show some trends. That will show, I mean, it's not going to say everything because, of course, we saw what happened 4 years ago. And I was just as surprised as everybody else. Right. In fact, I took my oldest, Cody came with me as my producer, thought she was going to be at history, and literally said to me, Mom, what is going on? You know, as if it were my fault. That the outcome she wanted wasn't happening. You know, it was pretty shocking. We were there at that Javits Center where the Hillary thought she was going to break the glass ceiling. It was really something else. This time, though, I'm going to have to be more reliant on some of that information that I'm going to have to really work some sources that will know what they're seeing in those key states. Florida, Pennsylvania, Arizona, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin. Those 6 states, and we all matter, but those 6 matter big time as far as the presidential race goes. And that's what I'll be watching is the presidential race. And then others in our newsroom will be watching, like we have this big graduated income tax fight going on. We have the County State's Attorney. So we have others assigned to that. But yeah, I'm going to have to be this time more kind of back to the basics of making phone calls, texting and emailing all those folks that now I've known all these years that get some of that information and say, what am I supposed to be watching for? What are you hearing? What do you think? And, you know, the night on a presidential election, it's mostly national news. We get little cut-ins every half hour of about 2 minutes. And then at 10 o'clock, we get to do our newscast unless they're going to declare a winner, which I don't think will happen at 10 o'clock this year.
Right. We have a question about how hard is it to put personal relationships and any vendettas you might have aside to tell people the facts? And
Oh my.
I mean, as you mentioned, leaders are people, and people are leaders. So it's
yeah, it is
all the human. You as a leader have all the human, variations that we all have, all our foibles, our strengths. So how do you weigh that in your career and how you're reporting a story that might be about somebody that you actually, really don't care for?
Exactly. And that absolutely has happened. That is when, thankfully, other people do read all of my copy. I don't joke, yes, if I'm out live and I'm kind of at a scene that some crime or event has happened. But if it's a piece that I've written, and especially a political piece, there are at least 3 people who read my copy. And I sometimes say to them, hey, am I being too hard? Or am I, I'm going to say, I think being a political reporter allows you to have a little bit of, here's how it went today, especially at the beginning of Rahm when he was so tightly controlled and he wouldn't take questions and wouldn't answer questions. And we were, kind of at loggerheads. I could have every day done a negative story about that. So I had to kind of tone it down. I'm going to be around. He's going to be around. We got to work this out. But yes, you got to, for me, when that happens, I have others read it and say, all right, am I too tough? Is this okay? And they'll definitely tell me, that's not appropriate. I would change it, that kind of thing.
I remember I was at a press conference where you were there questioning Rahm, and I remember he didn't call you right away, and you had your hand up. You were not going to be overlooked. And when he finally called on you, you could tell he bristled. He was like, oh, here she comes. So I think over time, you really grew on him. And, it's interesting that now he considers you one of his sources. That's fascinating. So another question, are you always assigned packages of stories, or can you sometimes have options to choose who or what you want to cover? Can you pitch stories?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I can pitch stories. Definitely. It's collaborative. Every morning when we have our conference call, we go through what are the stories of the day and who's going to do them and, that kind of thing. Today, one of the big stories here is that United Center is going to be a polling place on election day. And that was one of the things that the NBA had asked for after the George Floyd death, that they wanted more access, easier places to go for people to vote, bigger and a bigger arena in the need of social distancing. So that's kind of a cool, it would have been fun to go to the United Center today to see him getting it set up. But I can't, I'm here and I'm instead had already been assigned to the profile of the state's attorney's race. So, but we help each other out. The other reporters might ask me for insight and phone numbers. I might ask them. So yeah, it is very collaborative of how we pick what our story is. But yes, I usually have what we call a package. That is my voice on the tape. I have at least 1, if not 2, sometimes 3 every day.
Well, as part of your family, we all text each other and say, watch, Aunt Mary's got a hot one today. And everyone goes and checks whatever your feed is. So a few more questions as we kind of wind down. So a really good question. Objectivity is not neutrality. And as a reporter, it's your obligation to tell the truth. How do you manage this? And then a joke without drinking a Tito's handle. Very good. While reporting on the nation's challenges, especially with the current administration. So, it's a political question, just about objectivity and how do you manage your own political.
And we watched those White House reporters. I think the ones that most admire are the ones who just tell it straight and say, the president said this. However, that is not actually true. Okay. And say, here's what is going on. I mean, I think we do have to call out whether it is the president or the mayor or anyone. When the archdiocese said, we've got this priest abuse all handled, don't worry about it. That was not the case. And it doesn't help to shout and yell about it and get in a fight about it. Just, keep at it, be persistent, and be calm and say, this is what they say, but actually, here's the record. This is what's going on.
Interesting.
And you gotta hope, and I think that viewers and readers are informed enough to know what the truth is.
Thank you. Are there any stories you wish you had done differently?
Oh, wow.
Is that a common thing, or is that, you kind of go to bed saying, hey, I nailed this one, or are there some that, like any big in your career, anything you look back and say, oh, I know in my career there are things that I was young and sometimes a little too brash, and I play it over in my head and say, ooh, I learned so much. I now listen more than before I act, or I assess before I make decisions.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have to go in and change everything the minute I walk in the door. I need to be a better listener. So in your profession, are there things that over the years you've gained a lot of wisdom, and how does that reflect on your work?
Yes. And I can't think right away of like one story, but there probably have been many stories that I thought later, ooh, I might have been a little too tough on them. Yeah. Or I might have been a little too judgmental on that. And people definitely call you out. Especially political leaders will say, you weren't fair when you edited me. I said way more than that. Yeah. And, you took 10 seconds and I talked to you for 10 minutes. And that is an awesome responsibility to choose what is fair of what someone said. Thank goodness for our website that you can let it go a lot longer and direct people there. Okay. But definitely I've had those same issues of being little Miss Smarty Pants or, little Miss Boss, that I thought I knew everything and I was going to tell them how to do something. And maybe I needed to just take it down a notch. Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. So we're coming to the end, and I guess I want to give you the last couple minutes, just out of respect for your time and everyone who's carved time out of their busy day to be with us today. In summary, are there some leadership little nuggets of wisdom that you would share with people on the call? On the call, as you know, we're all works in progress. We're all on our leadership journey till the day we are no longer breathing. We're trying to be better humans. We're trying to be good in, as Rachel talked about, our different domains. Our domain is our work domain, our community domain, and our home and family and friends domain, but they all are woven together. And, you don't just, come into work and be one kind of person and go home and be a different kind of person. So just some of the nuggets that you might want to share with us in your, personal life, your career life, and your community life. What can we learn? Well,
I hope that people say that I try to be collaborative, and as a reporter and in our newsroom, respect, not just, to the big shots. Respect. I've had incredible interns who have walked me through social media, who have helped me incredibly with that aspect of now my career that I couldn't have done without. Because you're 20 or because you're 60, you bring something to the table. And I hope that that's recognized. And I think that that's part of the leadership of knowing, oh my goodness, I have some terrific interns who've gone on and are reporting and doing other things right now, that the time that they spent with me, they might say, wow, it was cool. I got to do this and that. They helped me incredibly because they offered a different insight. So that if as a reporter and perhaps in whatever work that all of you might do, be open. Don't think you have all the answers. Be open to listening and taking in what others offer, a different point of view. I think that, and we see it politically right now, there's so much division and we all need a little more unity. And that goes for our jobs as well. If you think that you're the only one who can do it, that is not necessarily being a leader to me. It's bringing all those points of view to the table. They might not all work every single time, but the respect for others, I think will, I hope that, I want people to respect me and I want to respect them.
That's beautifully said, Marianne. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us. This has just been remarkable. There are some other questions. We will send them off to you if you'd like to answer, but people talking about leadership and collaboration, I think you definitely hit a strong spot with people just in talking about that, and the listening and collaboration, all really important leadership qualities that can make or break you as a leader in your community and your family and in your workplace. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Marianne, thank you so very much.
Thank you. See you soon.